The Terminator franchise is gearing up for a major shift with Terminator 7, as Dark Fate marked Arnold Schwarzenegger's last appearance as the legendary T-800. While his breakout role came from Conan the Barbarian, it was the Terminator films that cemented him as a Hollywood icon. His portrayal of the T-800, blending raw strength with unexpected humor, especially on Judgment Day, remains one of his most memorable performances. Despite newer and deadlier Terminator models over the years, Schwarzenegger's presence gave the franchise its staying power. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Schwarzenegger made it clear, "The franchise is not done, I'm done." His final role as Carl in Dark Fate seemed to fulfill his promise of not returning. Meanwhile, James Cameron has been working on a secret Terminator project, confirmed to move forward without Schwarzenegger. While details remain scarce, it's almost certainly Terminator 7, marking a major turning point for the series. With Schwarzenegger stepping away, Terminator 7 faces a tough challenge of finding a worthy successor to the T-800. The franchise has always introduced increasingly powerful machines like the terrifying T-1000 in Judgment Day, and Dark Fate took things even further with the Rev 9, which could split into two entities. While the Terminator films have found creative ways to bring the T-800 back, the time has come for a fresh approach, one that builds a new character as compelling as Schwarzenegger's legendary Cyborg. And speaking of fresh approaches, you can now become a channel member. Enjoy early access to videos, have a say in which movies and shows we cover through exclusive members-only community posts, and share your take on upcoming topics. Plus, your support helps the channel grow in a big way. In that movie, and every one that followed, the filmmakers introduced a new character who could inherit the role of franchise star from Schwarzenegger. In almost all cases, there were plans for soft reboots and full trilogies with these actors, but for one reason or another, they all failed to successfully replace the Austrian oak. With talk of Terminator 7 ongoing, it shows just how difficult a task that is. Take Nick Stahl, for example. Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines skipped ahead a decade from the events of T2. Sarah Connor was killed off-screen by a terminal illness, and her now grown-up son John was living off the grid, paranoid that he was still being hunted by Skynet's foot soldiers from the future, despite having destroyed Cyberdyne's systems. Stahl replaced Edward Furlong in the role of John as he reteamed with the T-800 and embarked on another action-packed adventure to shut down Skynet. Terminator 3 ended with the revelation that the rise of Skynet and the nuclear holocaust were inevitable. The ending of Terminator 3 set up a new series of films that would follow Stahl's John into the post-apocalyptic future as he assembled the resistance force and launched a war against the machines. Terminator 3 received generally positive reviews from critics and made a decent haul at the box office, but it wasn't a resounding hit the way that T2 was, and audiences didn't really take to Stahl's John. If Terminator 3 had been a bigger hit, Stahl would have become the new face of the franchise, but he lacked Furlong's charisma and Schwarzenegger's screen presence. Then came Christian Bale. Warner Brothers went through with its plan to follow up Terminator 3 with a fourth movie set during the futuristic war between the machines and the human resistance. But since Terminator 3 wasn't a huge hit, Terminator Salvation was retooled as a soft reboot instead. Stahl was replaced by Christian Bale, who played an older, more grizzled John as the leader of the resistance. If Salvation had been a bigger hit, Bale would have replaced Schwarzenegger as the face of the franchise, especially since he was still playing Batman at the time, meaning his star power was at an all-time high. But Terminator Salvation received mixed to negative reviews. While Bale's performance was praised, the movie's screenplay was criticized for a very generic story recycling tropes from other sci-fi thrillers and post-apocalyptic movies, and McGee's mechanical direction was criticized for lacking the heart of the previous films. It didn't help that Bale's John wasn't really the focus of the movie. He was shown as a mythical figure through the eyes of Marcus, a human Terminator hybrid played by Sam Worthington, so the audience didn't really have a chance to connect with him. Next, Terminator Genisys tried to introduce two possible replacements for Schwarzenegger: Emilia Clarke as Sarah Connor and Jai Courtney as Kyle Reese. While Clarke could have made for a great Sarah, the movie was widely panned for its nonsensical storytelling and baffling retcons. Adding insult to injury, Schwarzenegger returned and completely overshadowed his replacements, proving once again that the franchise couldn't function without him. Finally, Terminator Dark Fate tried one last time to pass the torch. Mackenzie Davis's super soldier Grace was positioned as the new Schwarzenegger, while Natalia Reyes played Danny Ramos, the new future resistance leader. Davis was awesome in her role, but Dark Fate was another commercial disappointment, proving once again that no one can replace Schwarzenegger as the face of the Terminator franchise. With Terminator 7 in development, it's clear that the franchise isn't ready to die just yet. But unless it can find a new, compelling lead who can bring the same presence and impact as Schwarzenegger, it may never escape his shadow. At this point, the best way forward might not be to replace the T-800, but to reinvent what Terminator can be. Terminator 0, however, cleverly brought the series back to its roots, telling a genuinely suspenseful story where you were constantly worried about whether the characters were going to make it out alive. The first action scene in the mall felt ripped straight from the original film, highlighting just how terrifying these killing machines can be, even when they're just walking. It's a stark contrast to how the franchise evolved. With the idea that each sequel had to be bigger and more explosive than the last, the Terminator series lost sight of what made the original so special. Every film since T2 has primarily been an action movie, sidelining the horror elements that made the first Terminator stand out. That film was essentially a slasher movie, except the killer was a relentless robot from the future. It had a somber, almost nightmarish atmosphere, something Terminator 0 managed to replicate. If Terminator 7 wants to work, its first order of business is to make the Terminators scary again. But it's not just the tone that needs fixing. The way time travel is handled is just as crucial. Time travel is a tricky concept, both in-universe and from a storytelling perspective. The Terminator franchise has created plenty of plot holes with its use of time travel, though some of them, like Kyle Reese being John Connor's father or Skynet's creation being a closed loop, are fascinating paradoxes that add depth to the story. However, later films started focusing too much on the mechanics of time travel, losing sight of everything else. Terminator Genisys was particularly guilty of this, getting bogged down in alternate realities and convoluted timeline explanations. Instead of enhancing the story, all the excessive timeline talk just made things messy. While time travel is a fundamental part of the franchise, it should never overshadow the actual plot. Terminator 0 understood this perfectly. It utilized time travel and even had some mind-blowing twists caused by it, but it didn't let it define the story. That balance is something Terminator 7 needs to maintain. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.